most accountants don't understand structuring.
Hmm.
If you ask your accountant, they will basically say, "Oh no, I'm uncomfortable with that." The only reason they say that is because they don't understand it. There's
Hmm.
no handbook, there's no subject at university that taught them this.
Welcome to CUB Spotlight. Today, I'm joined by Peter, a partner at Investment Plus Accounting Group and self-described financial surgeon. With over 30 years experience, he takes an aggressive approach to tax minimization and asset protection. This episode, we unpack the strategies most accountants are too scared to touch, what the current environment actually means for business owners, and how to stop getting bled dry by the system. If you're building something and want unfiltered conversations with people who are in the trenches, this one is for you. Look, anyone who doesn't know him, look, Peter is a partner at Investment Plus Accounting Group, and look, he's got over 30 years experience in accounting, finance, and property. He's a CPA with a master's degree in commerce, and he's built a reputation as someone who isn't afraid to be aggressive when it comes to minimizing tax and protecting assets. And he calls him for his firm financial surgeons. I love that. So what we're going to do today is, Peter, we're going to unpack what it actually looks like in practice, especially in today's environment, and what most business owners get wrong when it comes to tax and financial strategy. Peter, thank you.
Thank you.
So, yeah, give me what's the surface level? If you want to go deep, awesome. I'm open to it. What's the surface level as to what you actually do with your profession?
Look, obviously we're an accounting firm,
Mhm.
and there's probably about 10,000 accounting firms in Australia. So how do you stand out from the crowd? Now,
Mhm.
we all do the same thing pretty much. Tax returns, business activity statements, the boring stuff, the bread and butter stuff.
Mhm.
Everyone does that, right?
Mhm.
Um, where we differentiate ourselves, that's why we call ourselves the 1% accountants.
Mhm.
We do the 1%ers to bring us to that elite level where we develop structures and strategies to minimize your tax legally,
Mhm.
obviously, and to put more money in your pocket to enable you to reinvest into the business. Because this government we have at the moment, and I've never seen it worse in my 28 years in business.
Mhm.
You know, we saw interest rates go up. Was it yesterday or 2 days ago?
Yes.
We're looking at the budget coming out next week, and then looking at making changes to negative gearing, increasing capital gains tax, taxing trusts, which has never been done before,
Yep.
at 30% or so. But you know, we'll wait for the writing for that. So you know, you need your accountant to get off his backside and show you strategies to put more money in your pocket because these bastards are not doing anything with the money that you're paying. So
Yep.
um, you know, and I'm a straight talk. I say it the way it is. I don't sugarcoat it. And there's no point using jargon, right? So we just cut
Yes.
straight to the
Absolutely.
through the noise. So that's
Yep.
what we do. We develop ways, strategies, whether it's through structuring, whether it's through tax minimization strategies, to minimize the amount that you pay. And
Mhm.
at the same time, holistically, we look at ways to protect your assets because there's no point in being in business if your assets are exposed and can be targeted.
Of course. Absolutely. With the what impact have you seen from the recent rise in the interest rate for just like people in general?
Look, that's probably the tipping point.
Mhm.
And I just can't fathom why they would increase rates. Yeah, inflation's gone up, but inflation's gone up
Mhm.
because of the petrol prices increased. And
Mhm.
because of that, it's increased transport costs. It's also increased the cost of all the other goods. But that's not due to demand.
Mhm.
Now, the only lever that this government is using is interest rates. Now, what they're doing is impacting pretty much the risk takers that have risked capital to purchase property or invest in their business.
Mhm.
It's basically going to have, I think it's going to be a tipping point where it's going to put a lot of businesses under.
Yep.
Um, you know, they talk about the word recession. I'm not afraid of that word recession. I think it's a good thing because what
Mhm.
that does, it gets the government to pull their finger out and say, oh, geez, we've really
Mhm.
fucked this up. What do we do to fix it now? Because at the moment, they've got this arrogance about them
Mhm.
where they're in government and there really is no opposition. The Liberal Party are virtually demolished
Yep.
through the rise of One Nation.
Mm-hmm.
And they're realizing this and they're thinking now's the opportunity to really give it to these business guys
Mm.
and implement our socialist policies and redistribute wealth to the lazy society part of our country because businesses are struggling.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
the ATO
that's
is
the
not
reality.
doing, yeah, the ATO is not doing any business a favour. They're liquidating. I've seen a liquidation over a $70,000 tax debt. And I said
Yeah.
to the ATO, you guys are so arrogant. You're a bunch of bureaucrats, unelected. This guy's willing to pay 35 grand. That's all he can afford.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a taxpayer. I'd rather take 35 grand than zero.
Mm.
But your arrogance can't see through that, and you have no concept of what's going on, in the real world. You've lost your finger on the pulse.
Mm.
And this is what we're dealing with. We are dealing with a bunch of unelected bureaucrats
Mm-hmm.
that do not understand what businesses are going through. So you know what? Let's take the power back and develop
Mm-hmm.
strategies to put more money in our pocket because they're not going to do it for you.
Yeah. Do you feel like there's a certain, let's say, like a certain tipping point where people have to act upon themselves rather than someone or allowing someone to do it for them?
Now's the time because
Mm-hmm.
you know, cash flow is a big issue in business.
Yeah.
Profit and loss is good, but cash is king. Now, 1 July, you're going to have to pay your employees superannuation every time you make a payment on
Mm-hmm.
their payroll.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's great, but a lot of businesses are struggling and they're using that cash flow. They are late in paying the super, which is understandable, but a lot of them do pay it. They
Mm-hmm.
just need some time.
Yeah.
That's going to put more pressure on your cash flow in your business. And unless you put some strategies in place to
Mm-hmm.
get on top of this, it's going to get even worse.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course. No, I love that answer to the first question because I mean, like you said, you say how it is, you're not afraid. You literally have, you have the aggressive approach, which I'm sure a lot of people need, a lot of people actually want. And so the first question I want to throw you is obviously you position yourself as a financial surgeon who isn't scared of his own shadow when it comes to tax minimization. What does that actually look like when you're working with clients, and where do most accountants draw the line that you're willing to actually push?
Look, the stuff that I know, they don't teach you at uni. Unfortunately, they want you to be the best and fairest. They want you to win that award with the ATO. Well, I don't want that award,
Mhm.
nor am I going to win the best and fairest with the ATO. Most accountants don't understand structuring.
Mhm.
If you ask your accountant, they will basically say, "Oh no, I'm uncomfortable with that." The only reason they say that is because they don't understand it. There's
Mhm.
no handbook, there's no subject at university that taught them this.
Yeah.
The only way I knew was I was lucky to have mentors throughout the years that I worked under who showed me
Mhm.
these strategies. People like Mark Burris,
Yeah.
who was a chartered accountant before he became known for Wizard. He had his firm called Burris Dow Vince, which I worked for.
Yeah.
Ed Chan, who was probably the best pioneer when it comes to strategies.
Okay.
All of these things that we have are proprietary structures that no other accounting firm has.
Mhm.
Learnt through my years of experience and testing these structures through audits and cases that have arisen throughout the years.
Mhm.
Now, unless you're an accountant that has been in that position, they're not going to know how to do it. And that's why the answer you'll get from your accountant is, I'm uncomfortable with this, because they're scared of their own shadow. But unfortunately, it's too late for them to learn this.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like they've essentially bit themselves in the butt. Like they've allowed it to happen and they're not even sure as to the, let's say, the impact. I won't say the aftermath. Maybe you might know more than obviously and I do in this situation. However, it's like they're essentially digging their own grave. Is that the right terminology to use or?
Look, they can't risk using you as a guinea pig.
Hmm.
Just, a lot of them some of them might say, look, I don't want to risk losing the client because he's expecting something from me. He's going to have to develop a strategy that's never been tested, and then you're going to be the guinea pig. So that's the problem you face. And the reason I hate accountants and the reason I call myself a financial surgeon
Hmm.
and the reason I said accountants are scared of their own shadow, because they are,
Hmm.
the accountants have allowed, and you're probably not aware of this, but I've spoken about this before,
Yeah.
they've allowed themselves, they are no longer, your accountant is no longer the trusted advisor. And I'll tell you why. They've allowed the government to bully them and to pressure them And there's a new law that says that if your accountant suspects that you're doing something wrong, right, even by asking a question, oh, can you help me develop a strategy? He's obligated, as soon as you walk out the door, to pick up the phone and dob you in. This is what's
Sounds
going on in the industry, right?
right.
So next time you go see your accountant, look at him in the eye and think to yourself, if I'm in the trenches, will
Hmm.
this mongrel stand with me or is he going to stab me in the back?
Mm.
9 times out of 10, he's going to stab you in the back. Run, get out of there, go to another accountant
Yeah.
because you don't want to be held hostage by these incompetent mongrels, you know?
Yeah, of course. What would be the tips that you'd recommend for someone like me who I hate doing tax. I've never liked doing it. If I'm looking after a if I'm looking for example, a financial advisor, what would be some tips for someone in my position to avoid, or let's say to minimize that risk from happening?
You mean how to choose the right accountant?
Yeah,
Is that the question?
yeah.
Okay.
So what you said before, like how would I minimize that risk of them potentially doing that if I was to work with them to help me, obviously with my
Well,
yeah,
I'm a big person on gut feels. A
yeah,
lot of times I've walked away from business decisions because it made sense on paper,
hmm
but my gut feel told me something was not right.
okay,
So if you're sitting there with this accountant and you're doing your business activity statements, your tax returns, and he's killing you with all these bills that you got to pay with the ATO, and he's not giving you any suggestions or any advice, and when you ask him, he looks uncomfortable.
yeah,
If your gut feel tells you that this guy's got no clue, then your gut
mhm,
feel is right.
yeah. It's
You
all
know,
it's about
it's a lot of trial and error until you find the right one.
yeah,
But we get a lot of referrals, from podcasts
mhm,
like this, and people call us up, and they're comfortable talking to us.
mhm,
We're basically your partner when it comes to your business. When you go through tough times, we're there next to you. We're not going
mhm,
to bolt and run away.
mm,
You got me standing next to you, and I'll develop a strategy to get you out of it. My
yeah,
motto in life is there is no problem that I can solve except a health problem. So
yeah,
if you said to me, you got cancer, I can't help you.
yeah,
But if you
of
said to me,
course.
you got a tax problem and you got a cash flow issue and how do you get out of it? I can develop a strategy for that. No problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like it really comes down, like you said before, it comes down to your gut feeling. It seems that the psychological intuition is that if you don't feel right about it, then it's probably not gonna end well if you keep going.
Correct. He or she will bleed you dry
Yeah.
to the point where you've got no bullets in your ammunition to
Hmm.
keep your business alive. Because with high interest rates, high petrol prices, high inflation, high taxes, and then you've got a weak accountant on the other end, you've got no hope.
Yeah. Yeah. No, of course. It's definitely something for people to watch out for. So,
100%. And we're living in probably the worst economic time that I've ever seen in 28 years. Believe me.
oh wow.
COVID,
Okay.
COVID, yes, it was
Yeah.
scary,
Hmm.
but we had government support throwing
Yeah.
money at us, right? And we
Mm,
survived it.
mm,
The GFC, what happened? They lowered interest rates. We
mhm,
survived it. At the moment, there is no government support. The budget
mm,
next week is talking about getting rid of negative gearing, increasing capital gains tax. So if you have to
mhm,
sell a property to keep your business afloat, you're
mhm.
going to pay more taxes. Now you think to
Wow.
yourself, is it worth me now selling the property
Yeah.
to reinvest in my business? Structuring, they're looking at taxing trusts a certain way that's never
Yeah.
been done before.
Yeah.
We're
Wow.
pretty much on our own. Unless you've got a great accountant giving you, hand holding you and giving you that support, it's going to be hard to survive this.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting environment to see how people will react to it, whether they react to it emotionally or like I think the way where it's like it will really test people's reaction to it, whether people will be actively reacting to it in a good way versus emotionally reacting to it in a way where they feel like that they've got nothing.
You know what? You were absolutely right when you talk about emotional reaction, because
Hmm.
one of the things that I look at if the economy is doing well, are people nervous and panicked when
Hmm.
they talk to you? Is everything urgent when it in fact isn't urgent?
Yeah.
Um, are they always angry and stressed? And I'm seeing a lot of that now. I'm seeing a lot of that now, and people taking longer to pay their bills. You know, if you put it all together, I don't think I've seen a situation where it ticks every one of these boxes, and
Hmm.
it is at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. It's incredible. So you've been doing this for over 30 years. What's been the biggest shift that you've seen in how business owners approach tax and financial strategies over that time?
Look, if I take us back to the introduction of the GST, that was obviously transformational
Yeah.
and we adapted quite well. But at the moment, we are living in very tough times. You've got the ATO at the moment. If you owe the ATO more than $100,000, they will put you on the credit watch. So
Mhm.
when you go for a loan, it shows up. So then they've got you as a hostage. You can't even get finance to pay them out, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
this was never the case 30 years ago when the GST came in, right?
Mhm.
So this is what the ATO were doing. And then during COVID, they introduced a thing called a small business restructure, which was great at the time,
Mhm.
but now we're seeing the problems with it. Small business restructure means that you're also going to get a mark on your name, so then
Mhm.
you can't get finance. But more importantly, the ATO are now being arrogant and saying, my clients have even put up, I'll pay you 70%, and the ATO have rejected it. The sheer arrogance of these guys
Wow.
of rejecting a 70% payout when
Mhm.
in liquidation they get zero.
Mhm.
This is what's going on. A small business restructure is for small business. The ATO are not assisting. They are rejecting a lot of proposals unless it's a minimum of 40 to 50%, and they're putting you under the microscope. If you're lodging late or you're paying late, they will use that against you and they'll say, nope, I want 70%. Sometimes they'll say, I want 100%, but you can't afford it. So what they then do is put you in a situation where you've got to liquidate and close your business. This is what's happening at the moment.
Mm. That's such a it's such a shitty position to put someone in as well, like especially business owner, to have to say that, for them to have to hear it, like it would literally be like a punch in the face.
Mate, it reminds me of communist China, and this is what's
Mm.
going on in Australia at the moment. The ATO has more power than the government,
Mhm.
are carrying on like a bunch of communists. They are anti-business. They are anti-business. They want businesses to fail because they're not providing a leg up. They're making it more and more difficult.
Mm.
Now, you need a good accountant that's going to help you navigate through that and develop strategies to get you through on the other end.
Mhm.
Like I said, every problem has a solution,
Yeah,
but not every accountant can figure out a solution.
to that problem.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, well.
And a lot of them panic themselves. So you're there, you imagine going to the doctor and the doctor tells you you got cancer and he's just as much shitting himself as you are.
Yeah.
How's that going to make you feel?
Yeah, even worse.
Exactly right. And that's what I say to it when I say they're scared of their own shadow. Because
Mm.
people, I've heard these stories. Mate, I got a letter from the ATO. They're going to liquidate my accountant. Was scared shitless. He didn't know what to do. I virtually had a nervous breakdown until I
Mm.
came to see you.
Mm.
Now, when they come and see me, I sit there strategically, methodically, without any emotion, and I cut straight through it. And they're like, geez, how come you're not panicked? I said, mate, I do this every day.
Yeah.
I do this every day. Would you like me to be panicked? How would you? No, 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 don't do that.
It seems like it's more of a proactive approach than, like we were saying before, an emotional approach, because you build the systems, you tell them this person next to me might not react to how I will react to it. However, I know that what I'm doing is going to build that fortress to be able to withhold anything.
Look, most accountants are terrible business people.
Hmm.
I know it's unusual to hear that. They can't even run their own businesses. They can't even run their own practices. A lot of them aren't making any money. A lot of them don't have systems in place. A good business has systems in place. They are bombarded with work. They can't keep up. They don't delegate. They don't teach their staff
Mm.
and make them into a clone of themselves.
Hmm.
They have no concept of succession planning. These are the things that accountants are supposed to advise you on, but they're not doing it themselves.
Hmm. Absolutely. This question leads in perfectly to what this conversation was. A lot of accountants are very conservative. What made you decide to take a more aggressive approach, and has that ever created tension with clients or regulators?
Look, I've never been one to, how can I say the word? I've always been a disruptor.
Yeah.
Um, And the most successful business people, not just accountants, but business people, are the
Mhm,
ones that are disruptors.
mhm,
Mark Burris is an example. Donald Trump's an example.
mhm.
I'm also in politics and I'm a disruptor in that sphere as well.
Yeah.
Um, Elon Musk, a disruptor, you know, Amazon. You have to be a disruptor.
Yeah.
Now, when you mention the regulators,
Mhm.
I'm not concerned. I actually embrace it. I'll tell you why. It
Okay.
tests my strategies. It puts
Mm.
them to the test. Is there a weakness in my strategy? If there is one, I'll identify it
Mhm.
and put another fence around it. So the only way that you test your structures is to welcome the regulator. So a lot of we've had audits. We've overcome audits for our clients. We don't take any unnecessary risks. It's all calculated. We're
Yeah.
not punting on, a horse race. This is basically a strategic investment in systems and structures working within the tax legislation to make it
Right.
work. Because the
Mhm,
tax legislation is a bunch of words.
mhm.
The only way it gets tested is through audits or test cases. And then that's where we sort of, some of our structures have come about where we've got a structure called an equity bank trust that provides asset protection. Um, and one of the byproducts of that structure, we developed this for a client way before he got married.
Yeah.
Now, when he went for a divorce years later,
Mhm.
his wife tried to penetrate that in the courts. She couldn't. Now, she got half the assets that they made during the marriage, and he wasn't concerned. He said, fine, I'm happy to
Mhm.
give her that, but I'm not going to give her stuff that I came in with.
Right.
He goes, thank goodness for your structure. It saved him. Now, we didn't develop that structure for that purpose, but
Yeah.
it's a bit like penicillin. It came about by accident.
Yeah.
So it has been tested that it works in those situations.
Yeah. You had that plan built as like a structural, like as like a structure to begin with, and then
Yes.
it worked out in the end for him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's incredible. So, because you work heavily in property and business tax, what's one of the most common and costly mistakes that you see business owners making in these areas?
In property,
Let's say,
well, I'll tell you property,
yeah,
for
let's start with
this
property.
example.
We'll
Yeah,
start with property. If that moves into business tax, then we'll go there as well.
the biggest problem with property is a lot of people in business want to dabble in property, right? Which is
Mhm.
fair. But they want to dabble not only in property development. I want to build a duplex. They don't get the advice. They go ahead with the duplex. They make the sale and they realize they're up for GST.
Mhm.
Now, the GST, you can't pass it on in resi.
Okay.
The price is the price. So the
Mhm.
GST that you have to pay on that sale comes off your profit, off your bottom line. And clients say, oh, it was a one off. Mate, the ATO don't look at it like that. That's considered a business. You need to be aware of it at the start and factor that in. Do
Mhm.
you even go ahead with this development knowing that you've got to pay GST? I've had new clients come across because their accountants didn't advise them on this, and they've
Mhm.
lost money on it because they've developed it in a stage when, if you remember, material prices increased during the COVID times,
Yeah.
and that ate into their profits. And the GST was what the profit they only had. When they had to pay that, they ended up with zero profits
Wow.
because you've got to, if you're going to build something and
Mhm.
then sell it straight away, you're up for GST.
Of
Because the
course.
ATO look at what was your intention at the start. Your intention was to build and sell, not to build, keep, rent, and hold long term.
Mm.
So that's why you got to get all these intentions written down, documented, and whatnot to enable you to fight against the ATO.
Mm. Of
If your intention
course.
is changes, for example, my intention was to keep this profit, rent it out. Then somewhere down the line, circumstances changed. I had to sell because I had financial pressure. The ATO then would find it difficult to attack you under the GST regime because your intention originally was to keep.
Yeah.
So there's all these strategies and psychological, it's all psychological intention,
Of
right?
course. Yeah.
You've
Yeah.
got to have it all documented and you've got to have it all in place. So
I
they're
feel
the
like it's
biggest mistakes that people make in property.
mm. What about business tax?
Getting the structure wrong.
Hmm.
Um, I'll give you a very basic one. People that are in business with someone else, like a friend or an associate, they'll trade as a company.
Okay.
I'm not a fan of that structure. I prefer unit trusts. The reason I
Hmm.
say unit trusts is that you take care of your tax and your partner takes care of his tax. When you have a company, you're joined at the hip, and I might have some losses that I haven't taken advantage of
Hmm.
in the past, but you can't take advantage of that if you're operating as a company structure. But if
Right.
operating as a unit trust, the profit then comes down to my family trust,
Hmm.
and my family trust might have losses for whatever reason, and therefore I don't end up paying tax on that. But you
Mm.
can't take advantage of that if you're trading as a company. So that's just a basic tip in
Yeah.
terms of structuring.
Yep. No, absolutely. So you offer a very holistic service, tax, bookkeeping, mortgage broking, financial service, etc. Even insolvency. How do you decide what's actually valuable for a client versus just trying to sell more services?
Oh, look, I'm not a fan of selling services to clients. Even some of them have come say, look, I want to develop this structure, have a holding company, have another one. I just look and I say, mate, your structure is so complicated. I'm happy to do it. It's
Yeah.
just going to add cost to you,
Hmm.
but it makes no sense.
Hmm.
I'm just a straight shooter. Look, I've been in business for 30 years. You don't survive 30 years in business by
Yeah.
bullshitting clients and trying to gouge them for fees or whatnot.
Of course.
So I look at something where if I see a need for it,
Hmm.
I offer it on the table and it's up to the client. I don't
Hmm.
give this the hard sell. I'll
Hmm.
give the best advice when it comes to these are the pros and cons.
Hmm.
You make the decision.
Yeah. So it's like an open pool in a way. It's like, hey, like this is where you're at in your situation. This is what I believe could help. However, is that how you usually approach it, or do you have another way of
Pretty
approaching
much. I say, look,
it?
my advice is this. And if I was in your position, I'd be doing this.
Yeah. Okay.
These are the pros, these are the cons. I want you to have all the information. Don't give me an answer right now. Sleep on it. Take a
Hmm.
day or two, then come back and we can have another discussion. So,
Yeah.
no pressure selling in the sense that you've got to do this right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Because I feel like, do you try to treat them in a way where if the tables were turned, you wouldn't want them to hard sell you, so you don't give that same energy back to them?
Look, I'm just uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Um,
That's fair.
I don't know. Being an accountant, most accountants are not good salespeople.
Hmm.
I just have a conversation with them without selling.
Yeah.
And then I let them decide. And sometimes I say to them, look, I don't want you to give me an answer right now. I want you to give me an answer tomorrow.
Hmm.
And then that way they're comfortable with it. They can't come back and say, oh, look, I made the wrong decision. You just got to allow them to percolate on what's in front of them.
Yeah.
And more than likely, by giving them that time, they own the process
Mm.
rather than me owning the process.
Hmm. Absolutely. You're essentially giving them free range to be able to think,
Yeah.
to be able to process all that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
exactly.
I love that approach. I love that approach. That's awesome. So you've won awards for being one of the best tax accountants in Australia.
Yes.
Firstly, congratulations.
Thank you.
What do you think separates the top 1% of accountants from everyone else?
Proactiveness. Like
Mhm.
I've said, you need someone that's proactive, not someone that's passive, that just does your best and, you know, uh, can we do something? Do you have a strategy to minimize it? No, see you next quarter. You know, that's what
Yeah.
separates the good from the bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Do you feel like, let's say the good from the bad? I want to go deeper down that rabbit hole a bit more. Do you feel like when you said trust your gut feeling, do you see instances where people have that gut feeling and they still go down that rabbit hole and then they still get burnt? Is
Yeah,
that very often? Okay. Mm.
yeah, that happens. I mean, look, they realise it later on. It can be fixed, but it takes time and it costs
Mm.
money.
Mm.
Um, Unnecessary time, unnecessary stress, unnecessary money. But unfortunately, you have to invest in that.
Hmm.
Otherwise, the the problem will get even worse.
Yeah, of course. Do you feel like that's a lesson for people worth like experiencing, or do you feel like it's better just to once you feel that feeling in your like in your tummy, you're just like, nah, you just have to go to this person that you know is going to do a good job?
Yeah, look, I think if you're uncomfortable with the accountant you're dealing with and your gut feels telling you otherwise, I think you got to trust it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like I said, I've seen situations where the accountant structured a property transaction and it should have been structured a different way, and the
Mhm.
clients ended up with a land tax bill that's going to
Right.
bleed him every year. And
Mhm.
unless he pulls his finger out and does something now to
Mhm.
fix it, long term, it's going to be worse.
Mhm.
So you've basically got to not be afraid to pull the pin, knowing you're going to be better off in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, that's an incredible point to make. So, hypothetically speaking, like let's say if I came to you and I said, "Look, I want to pay less tax and protect what I've built,"
Mhm.
what would be the first thing that you would need to understand about my situation before giving any advice? And this could be anyone.
Look, we'd obviously need to look at what structure we're going to operate with today. I don't like overcomplicating the structure.
Hmm.
And then I will say, as we grow, we're probably going to look at developing this structure by adding it to your existing structure, but let's not do it now. We don't want to
Hmm.
add costs. We don't want to add complications to it. Your structure is your vehicle to protect your assets and also minimize your tax. Do we incorporate a management entity as well because you've got a company that's probably got some IP, probably got some branding. You don't want anything that's going to attack that structure, so you're going to have to liquidate and then you can't operate.
Yeah.
How do we put a fence around our business to ensure that we don't get attacked? Well, let's set up a management company to pay our staff because most legal costs are around unfair dismissal or someone might get injured and workers' comp might say no, it's your fault.
Mhm.
You don't want that in your main trading entity. Let's set up another entity. And if there are any problems in that
Mhm.
structure, we can always cut it off, develop another structure at the same time, keeping the integrity of your trading entity.
Right.
We've got to keep the trading entity intact always,
Mhm.
always protecting that.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that would be like the cornerstone, like even like the benchmark as to what you'd have to protect.
Correct.
Oh,
Correct.
awesome. Closing question for you is, are you proud of where you are in business?
Yes, but I'm a hard taskmaster. I always want to achieve more.
Absolutely.
I'm never
Absolutely. Nothing wrong with that.
satisfied.
Yeah.
Never satisfied, which is a hard trait to have,
Hmm.
because you're always pushing yourself.
Hmm.
And
Absolutely.
to get longevity, to keep excitement in your business, you've always got to achieve new goals. You always got to look for better ways. And if you stop doing that, it's the time to give up.
Mm.
It's like a football player. If he's no longer enjoying the training, time to retire.
Yeah.
In business, unless you're thinking of better ways to grow your business, to develop new strategies for your clients, because as your clients grow, you grow as well.
Of course.
And if you stop growing and if you stop developing ways because tax legislation changes every year,
Hmm.
you've got to be always one step ahead, and it's constant. It's not just I've got this structure and let's say I put it in the shelf and I don't worry about it. We're constantly tinkering with it.
Yeah.
You've got to have that energy to be able to do that, to run your business, see clients. There's a lot of things on the table, but you've got to have systems in place that enable you not to get overwhelmed yourself,
Hmm.
to be able to focus on the high end stuff.
Hmm.
And you're constantly with me, I'm constantly training my staff. I'm like a teacher. Whatever I know, I want them to know. So
Hmm.
whenever they talk to a client, it's like I'm talking to a client. You
Yeah.
know what I always say? You know who the best business person in the world was?
Who? Of
Jesus.
course.
12
Of
apostles.
course.
They basically preached his gospel. He taught them,
Hmm.
and then those 12 have taught another 12, and so forth and so forth.
Yeah.
You are constantly teaching your team and staff. Never keep anything in your head. Always tell them.
It's like being a mentor.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of energy too.
Oh,
And
of
most
course.
accountants hate
Absolutely.
doing it. They
Yeah.
hate doing it.
Yeah. Well, I feel like that's what brings you energy at the end of the day, right?
100%. Because if you don't have 12 apostles or 12 staff members taking the burden off you,
Hmm.
you are going to drown. You're not going to have longevity in this game.
Mm,
You know, you've got to be fit mentally, you've got to be fit physically. And I say physically because I mean, look, I'm a big advocate. I take time to go to the gym. I've consciously done that.
mhm,
You know, not to look good on the beach, basically just to give me that vitality to be able to deal with the everyday problems that we ourselves come across in business,
mhm.
not only for your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Peter, it's been incredible.
Thank you for the time, and
Appreciate
I
it.
appreciate the conversation.
Oh, pleasure. So, if people want to work with you, where can they find you?
Wait, the website's always the best.
Mhm,
Investplusaccounting.com.au. Google my name, Investment Plus. It'll come up. Our phone number, our email. Um, by all means, and you know, we can definitely have a chat over a coffee, over a phone call.
mhm.
Initial consultation. Obviously, there's no charge, but you know, most clients want to come on board after that discussion. They realise the error of their ways, and
Yeah,
they come over. They come over to the other side.
awesome. They go over to the bright side.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah. No,
Exactly.
awesome, awesome. Well, Peter, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you again, and lovely talking to you, and hope to
Absolutely.
do it again.
No, thank you.